the India development debate on ET now. It's time now for an IDD Direct, and we're joined today by a very special guest this evening on the India development debate. He may well be one of India's most reform-oriented ministers, but he's got his task cut out as he navigates a hostile trade environment, rising current account deficit, and genuine difficulties that exporters are facing in this country. Answering some tough questions on the India development debate tonight is Commerce and Industry Minister Suresh Prabhu.
Indeed. So thank you very much for being with us right here on the show tonight, for sparing time. And let's not waste time and go headlong into what we've been debating for a while now. 5 months into the GST, exporters are still struggling with refunds. I know, and I've been given to understand that FIO delegation met you very recently. Procedural and operational problems still exist. July to November, working capital worth 50,000 crore rupees is still stuck. How will you ensure that the entire process of the GST, which perhaps has hit the exporting community hard, is simplified? And I'm tempted to also ask you, are you planning to reach out to the Finance Ministry once more on this?
You know, number one is, particularly the exporters issue is a very important issue. Working capital blockage is an important issue. So therefore, partially it has been addressed. I think we have to look into two ways. One is the regime that can be put in place so that the exporters don't face this problem at all in an institutionalized way. While that is being done, to address the current problems, the GST Council has already said that they will start giving refunds quickly. I think we must give those refunds as quickly as possible. That's one part. I just met Dr. Vijay Kelkar recently, and he has written a paper on this particular issue of exporters and the GST. I think there are very good points he has also made. So I think we really are engaged with all the experts, all the committees, all the people who are really knowing about it, and we are trying to find a solution to this. But I can assure all my friends that this is the government which is responding positively, which is engaged with you. They are as concerned or more concerned about the issue than those who are affected. So we really work as together, but try to understand GST was necessary, we all agreed. I remember a time when I used to go anywhere in the country, all the stakeholders, chartered accountants, lawyers, business people, consumer organization, they'll come and tell us, why don't you bring GST quickly? So now GST has brought in all possible concerns have been taken on board, but still there is a possibility that some more could be there.
Okay, Mr. Prabhu, the other concern is on the trade deficit in October, which rose to a 3-year high at about a little over $14 billion, mainly driven, of course, by low exports of textile and gems and jewelry, jute, carpets, garments, all labor-intensive sectors. How worried are you that India's exports are not rising in line with the global economy that's now looking up?
You know, firstly, this linkage between global GDP growth and exports has to be properly understood. There was a time when global trade was growing at a rate faster than global GDP. Now it has been a structural change in the global trade, in which global trade does not rise as fast as the global GDP rises. There has been a contraction for various reasons, including the commodity prices, etc. So now we must realize that correlating it only with one parameter is not the right thing to do, number one. Number two, exports in India are rising, but should rise even faster, provided we look at some of the structural issues. And therefore, we must look at some of the problems that exporters in India are facing, maybe because of so many reasons. The countries who are large exporters have always deliberately looked at the currency, because the weaker the currency, it helps the exporters significantly. So there are so many factors responsible for this, number one. Number two, that is an internal issue, whether there are deficiencies in infrastructure, interest rates, exchange rate, all of this. But then there are externalities. There are countries where our products will go. Are their economies growing fast enough, that particular economy, to absorb the potential growth in the exports? Number two, the kind of product that we have been exporting, they are the traditional export items. Now we need to also diversify our export basket. It is not good enough that we can rely only on those export items that have been done for years together. There has been a significant change in the market conditions. So what we are doing? We have started now doing a market research for 10 important geographies where there is a possibility of penetration more than the developed market which India is already exporting. So that will, now the few months that reports should be ready. We are engaging professional agencies to do that market research for the first time. So based on market research, we'll do it. Secondly, I have asked all Export Promotion Council to prepare their own business plan. It's not enough that they will export it. Thirdly, like for example, gems and jewelry. In that, there are two major components, diamonds and jewelry. Diamonds, of course, slowed down a bit in the last few years, but diamonds generally have done well as opposed to the jewelry. There's a huge potential for jewelry exports, which we are not even tapped. Now, India traditionally, every village has a jeweler. So we have the skills. We have a domestic demand, of course, but there is large population needs jewelry. They wear jewelry. Thanks to, as you know, all ladies like it, even the male like to present a jewelry. So jewelry has a demand constantly. So why not we explore that possibility? So looking into that. So what we are doing? We are looking at geographies, geography specific strategy, present products, how they can be upgraded in terms of packing, in terms of quality, in terms of pricing, new products, and what are those new products, how they should be marketed, strategies for that. In addition to this, we are looking at some countries where traditionally India has a fantastic relationship, geopolitically and even otherwise. Now that relationship, despite being so good on the other count, has not been exploited economically. And because we have such good relationship, that means there is a receptivity to receive more, but it has not been fully exploited. So we are targeting those countries as well. So I am very sure that we are creating a very comprehensive strategy to look at these issues. And it is not just I am saying which is already under implementation. I went to Central America, I went to Latin America, I had asked my Secretary Commerce with her colleagues, with the bankers, with some other stakeholders. She went to East Africa, met 10 countries there. So we are working on a very comprehensive strategy. I went to East Asia, I also went to Southeast Asia. So we are really targeting important markets, important geographies, important territories.
That's a comprehensive answer in terms of markets, product strategy, geographies that you're looking at, sir. But there are many out there, and I'm going to ask you a question that obviously, you know, impacts the rupee. There are many out there who believe that the rupee is overvalued and is hitting exports. And there are still others who believe that a correction perhaps is long overdue. Will you welcome, as India's Commerce and Industry Minister, if there were to be a correction?
You know, firstly, I must accept the fact that rupee is a currency which floats in the market, and we have a very transparent system in India as to we don't try to administratively control the currency rate. So it's a floating, it's a currency. So I must accept that as a reality. But as I said, historically, even now it is proved that those countries who keep their currency low, whether it's Japan, whether it's Korea, whether it is China, even today, they always benefit from it. But we have to accept that this is something which is the reality and which is beyond the Ministry of Commerce. But we'll definitely try to manage the situation in a way that there are certain which are actually externalities to the ministry, externalities to the export sector. But we must, despite that, we must grow. And I firmly believe that increasing exports of India is in India's strategic interest. It creates an economic footprint in the country, in the geography, where we can also derive benefits other than just economic benefit. And therefore, export has to be strategically promoted. It's different matter that it has huge domestic benefit like creating more jobs, creating more supply chains, creating more and more opportunities for small and medium enterprises. That of course the domestic benefit. But in addition to that, we get huge benefit beyond the borders of India, and therefore we must promote exports in a very significant way.
Mr. Prabhu, the other concern, of course, is the current account deficit, which has also worsened recently owing to higher oil prices and, of course, the huge Chinese imports and weak domestic manufacturing. It's been pointed as a risk area by S&P as well in its ratings review just last week. How worried are you with the possibility of a worsening current account deficit? Because so far there's been a lot of focus on the other deficit, the fisc, but you know, we cannot afford fault lines on the current account as well at this stage, can we?
See, current account deficit is a function of so many factors. One is the trade deficit, but other is also the deficit that can come out from invisible as well as the capital. So what we are planning to do is to also increase our services export significantly. Services has a huge propensity to export. Therefore, we are trying to increase the export in a considerable way. We are making very concerted effort on services export.
All right, sir, just to take a breather away from exports and rupee and CAD and trade deficit, I want to talk to you about an issue that you have raised, and you've raised, I'm given to understand very strongly, with the US tightening the H-1B and L-1 visa norms, the US-India Bilateral Policy Forum is where you've raised this issue. But have you so far got any indications, any feelers from the American side that they're willing to perhaps relook at this?
See, basically, as you know, every country has their own policies. But we have raised the issue very strongly. We have explained to United States that this is in their interest, that more and more Indian professionals offer these services to them, because this has also helped US, and I gave them the numbers, creating jobs in the United States, creating more economic opportunities in the United States, and more importantly, and that needs to be quantified. So I think one of the organizations must quantify that. It has given a huge advantage to US economy by creating more productivity. And productivity gains increase the GDP also significantly. So these are the huge benefits which are accrued to United States by doing that. Another thing is that if you want to provide services, and US agrees that Indians can provide a better service, can you provide that service without somebody being there? And for somebody to be there, can he enter that country without visas? Then the visa regime should be such which facilitates his stay there, commensurate with the work that he is supposed to do. So these are all to be properly aligned to each other. You cannot have a system wherein we want a Indian system, but visa is a problem. We can give visa, but the tenure and the condition of visa will be different. The cost of visa will be different. All of these things to be aligned to each other. We have explained that matter to them. When I talked to Secretary Ross as well as to the US Trade Representative, I am very sure they would be considering it positively.
Good to know that you've raised this up in a strong manner with the US administration. Wonder if they will, of course, act on it now. Mr. Prabhu, last word. The US has been very vocal in its disapproval on pharma pricing caps. How do you intend to balance global trade compulsions and commitments vis-a-vis a poor population's needs?
No, see, we are very clear about one thing very clearly. Multilateralism has to prevail. This has happened over a long period of time. The countries have all benefited from the multilateral trading system. Some have benefited more, some have benefited less. But a question that we must ask each other is, if there were no WTO, would have done a better job or not? WTO is a far democratic institution. It functions on the basis of consensus. It's a transparent system. So I think we must promote that system. And I think I have talked to at least 40-50 ministers in the last few weeks, and all agree with me that we must make sure that the biggest outcome that we must aim at Buenos Aires is to ensure that multilateral trading system will prevail.
All right, long live multilateralism and globalization. But on that note, completely run out of time here, sir. Thank you very much for sparing time and speaking to us on some very relevant and important issues. As India's Commerce and Industry Minister, we do hope you're in safe hands. But out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate and also on the IDD Direct. Thanks very much for being with us, Sandeep.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with the top 10 stories of the day and top 10 at 10 with Ruchi Bhatia. Keep it with ET Now.